you guys had another meal about a year ago. When the last time you were here for something?
Yeah, I generally eat at the gym.
Yeah, I saw the post, but I couldn't make it up. No.
Just gotta
Last time you were here for something?
I just.
Yeah, I saw the post, but I couldn't make it up. No.
Just gotta
Last time you were here for something? Yeah, I saw the post, but I couldn't make it up. No. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I saw the post, but I couldn't make it
Actually,
I was going to say, it's coming from that side.
Oh. What idiot has the, that would be me, this idiot.
Swansea. Mark, here's Al Evans.
Nice to meet you. So what's your name? What's Swansea? In Singleton. All right. Well, my mum lives about 4 miles from So yeah, she.
The bandwidth's not very good.
Yeah, and I went to school. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't expect to live anywhere else. I don't know. Yeah, very much so. Catherine Zeta-Jones as well. Yeah. Yeah. I'm guessing that you have an aviation link.
Oh my God, there's a lot of people that have.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
On the probable?
Not that's family friends. No. You gotta find mostly.
Just a bit of a delay.
Yeah, there's probably like a 25-second delay.
My father, who lives down in
Assumed it was a girl.
probably saw you.
Charlie, it's made in tin land. Not China. It's not made of China.
It is
My street friend. Sweet.
And I'm guessing that you both listen to the show.
Christ, you're going to start on time, Jeff.
Quite possible. Depending on whether or not I'm ready to start.
Robin, remember, room over here in the shade.
I'm aware of that.
Well, that's west. It is. I just did my compass on my road.
Yeah, that's north.
We drink all the beer in the cooler.
Oh, we'll get there. Yeah, super.
You should have texted me.
This took a little bit longer than I thought it would to get it set up.
Just a little admin announcement for the recent arrivals. Should we please respect this gentleman's RV, and he's got a beautiful paint job on it, and he wants to make sure we don't get too close.
So far, we're good.
Thanks very much. That's good. So that you with the knife. No, don't do that.
And sharp instinct.
calm before the storm.
That's my audio.
Perfect. Hey Nick, it sounds just like the Jeff House drive. Is it really? Yes.
It was great. Yeah, this thing is like driving a little compact car. Just like it.
How's the crossway?
It was okay. I don't think we had much crosswind, so we're okay. Had to just put in a little bit of rudder and opposite aileron and a little cross control. Worked great.
Hey, Landon. Yo.
Hello, hello. Good to see you all. Now you know
Beer in the cooler. Beer in the cooler.
Free beer in the
beer,
cooler.
wine.
Just be careful
No,
with that.
beer, water.
Maybe
wine, I don't know.
We keep away from the camper because that's a gentleman's quite rightly very proud of the paint job. He doesn't want anyone getting too close.
Because it is.
Yes, sir.
What's the
Yes, it is. Oh, beautiful pocket.
It's a Behringer digital mixer. XR18.
Your voice has changed a lot.
What a beautiful
And
pocket.
I'm controlling it through this.
It's my line.
Yeah, it's my line.
Thank you, thank you.
Take the show in the
Now you know we said
There
11:30,
are-
but we never start on time, so we're probably going to start around noon, just so everybody gets,
Just to make everyone feel,
feel comfortable.
Barbara was there. There are a couple of Acme Red gifts for the two best questions of the day. We'll have a vote at the end, and Jeff will decide. Or perhaps Liz will decide. We don't know.
To encourage listener participation.
Well, no, we'll
Very good.
vote, and then Liz will decide.
Yeah, just let in whenever and say we got a question.
More
We've got the
diplomatic, I
microphone. Tell me when to turn you on.
Ooh, have fun.
So she-
the Romanian democracy system. Just listening to the last episode, you and Steph did a finger wag.
What's that for?
There's no such thing as PTSD.
No such thing as a
Well, there's PTSD for some ratings. I think they're almost all wrong.
PCS? What were we talking about?
Test
Well, they
standards.
did
Well, no, I don't get a finger wag because I haven't a clue what that
I haven't taken a check on it.
Everything's so dusty.
Helicopter needs to get involved.
I guess that would be soggy.
I'm not sure about CFI.
There's still time for you to have a beer spill. There's still time for you to have a beer spill.
Yes, sir.
You can't hear the challenge. Everyone will see.
It is. It doesn't matter. Actually.
You're not in your home studio anymore.
I think I missed the AA meeting this morning. Again.
It wasn't you that had the stuck mic last night during the air show because you got laundry, was it?
Oh, really? Did they have a stuck mic? Oh, I didn't hear that. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
tried to
never
go to the AA meeting this morning, but it was 12 steps too far.
Rim shot. There's my rim shot.
Everybody that's just arriving, please stay clear of that camper. We don't want any damage done to it. He loves that paint job. We love it too. So please stay clear of that camper.
And Nick, can you say that joke
I can't remember what it
And
was.
free beer.
about the AA meeting?
I tried to go to the AA
Look
meeting
in the
this morning,
corner,
but
there's
it
free
was
beer.
12 steps too far.
Free beer. That's how we say it in Boston. Free beer.
Yeah.
Beer here.
Wow. Wow. We're steering clear of the gentleman's camper. Oh, thanks very much, Aaron.
You'll have to get close, pretend like you like
Yeah, you have to crowd in close, and we like audience participation, so that's good.
Yeah, we do need caution tape. That'd be good. Make it look like a crime scene or something. No one will go near it.
She's a really weird.
Yeah.
What's it like in the sun out there? Is it nice?
Sorry.
Probably one.
Sorry about the sun, everybody.
Did you guys go to the Bose presentation?
You're apologizing
at
for the sun?
Fest?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Oh, okay. It's just that I thought it was so funny. This guy talked about those for 30 minutes and no one could hear the word he was saying.
That's how good the noise reduction is.
Rim shots.
Dang it.
I wish your other thing was
So
looking for the
my soundboard is right here and it's
Yeah.
dead. So I'm
Is there a way
having
to
to use
plug it in?
another program.
Is there a way to plug it in down here? And I can man the soundboard if you'd like. I'd be happy to take over that.
Oh, that's
That's very
dangerous.
good with the soundboard.
Well, yeah, we can do that if we have, it just requires an iPad charger.
Oh, I have one.
Okay.
Yes.
And then
Are we out of plugs?
Oh,
I think we have
Oshkosh childhood.
Just bear in mind, everything you give
I have
you'll
a
never get
portable
back.
charger anyway. So.
Let's take this
You have
out
a
of
portable
this.
charger? 'Cause I've got one.
It's really a nice place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me go see real quick.
Awesome.
We should have started 3 minutes ago, so we are
Yeah.
right on time still.
Yes, we still
Here we
have
go.
at least 15 minutes.
You don't mind if we drain some of this battery?
I've got like 3 more.
I did the same thing. I bought like a
I just need to
bazillion
get this out of
these.
this
That
case.
one, you can probably charge my iPad.
It's very difficult.
Huh?
Amazon.
I've only done it once.
It's just a high,
We're going to be fashionably late again.
The plug headphone thing, this is too big.
Oh, here, it just needs to go into this.
Yeah, well, I know. I'm not ready for that yet.
Lodge.
I think we might need some bug spray. I don't have a bug for me.
Even being helpful as you always.
Okay, I need some kind of a tool to. So,
You need a tool?
try to.
If it's that difficult, don't worry about it.
Well, I'm almost. Anybody have good experience with getting these things off the this iPad? Who has strong hands, fingers,
I have one experience.
Here, hold it.
without breaking it because
You
it's
don't want to break
company
it?
property?
How do they expect you to charge it normally?
Oh, it has nothing to do with the charging. It has to do with the headphone jack. This headphone thing is too big to fit through the case.
That's what she said.
I'm trying to
Bad-
use my
it's a
words
bad
wisely.
design. Very bad design.
And normally I have a little
Design for
thing that works with that, but I don't have it with me.
Design flaw.
Okay. Now,
You'll never be able to use that case again. But
No, I'm looking. It's fine. I got them freaking on the lounge, right?
Just remember this weird.
Does this have a button on it to?
Yeah,
Easy to get back in.
Oh, that's good.
It's a pivot case, so what you do is.
it might take a while for everything to register because it's
Dead,
dead.
Flips in here, it's sort of-
mostly dead, more than mostly dead. Oh, there we go.
Look at, oh, sorry. And it'll need to be a landscape when we pull up the,
it's a bum.
In that big here, cotton gin.
Well, it says it's got 61%.
oh,
Maybe overheated.
I don't know what happened. That's weird. Doesn't come up at all for me.
Just not my charging block is that fast.
Look,
It's definitely.
Wow, it's powerful. Thank you. And give it a test.
Okay.
Okay, turn the volume up all the way.
It's a hallway.
Okay.
Right good.
Shut up, Jeff.
we have that a little louder.
Passive
Use that one
aggressiveness right there. I'll play another one. It's different. It shouldn't seem very loud.
No, it's not.
No.
No, to be on the speakers, it's about the right.
Oh,
Okay.
it just sounds quiet to us.
It's about the same level as the jingle.
Somebody has their,
I just
okay.
I was just figuring out, checking the latency.
Yeah, it's about 25, 30 seconds. Something like that. Wow, look at all these great people And then the rest of you too.
Sorry, I should.
Better late than never.
You know what the most important thing is? How many is timing?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to. I have to familiarize myself with the board here. I'll get better as we go on. No,
all great. Something one.
I'm sure one. I know which one you're gonna play. Okay, like the longest
Very
one.
loud. Got this thing all the way up. Come on.
No, I don't see one. It says back.
Wait, maybe the volume on that end.
No, it's all the way up. It's all the way up.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh.
I don't know. It'll work.
Let me just punch this up a little bit more. Let's try it again. Appropriate. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's my theme too.
All right. So you're going to do.
Shut up, Joe.
Okay.
That's nice and loud.
Yeah.
And then.
And then this one.
So yeah, as soon as it's over, as soon as I.
Say what you make. Yep,
when I'm
I got
saying
it.
the thing, just hit that.
Okay. It will probably be not kind of smooth.
Oh, that's all right. It'll work. It'll work. Who cares?
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Well, trust
Really?
me, I'm a doctor.
Really.
I just put down pilot t-shirt on.
And turn the recorder on. Yeah. Hello, everybody in the chat room. Hey, everybody, say hello to everybody in the chat room.
Hello.
All right, good.
Wish you were here.
Wish you were here.
Why
All
aren't
right.
you here?
Yeah,
Good question.
Why aren't you here? Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our special Oshkosh Airline Pilot Guys show. Called it OshBlast2019 Extravaganza. And basically, it's not a normal show. You all know that. It's just going to be a Q&A.
Well, it
kind
isn't
of
ever
thing.
normal.
Well, yeah, it's never really. But we're not going to do the news, and we're not going to do feedback. We're going to do feedback, direct live feedback from all of you. We have a microphone. Captain Al has in his possession, or he did at some point. There it is.
I have it.
Oh, let me make sure we have your microphone on, sir. There we go.
I have it.
Yes.
I'm ready to roam.
Very good. Phil Donahue, but most of you don't know who Phil Donahue is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all know.
The old people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not Sally Jesse.
Yeah. He doesn't have the glasses for it. Anyway, so yeah, that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to have fun and talk about the show and people's experiences and all kinds of questions and perhaps some accurate answers. Probably not.
50%.
Yeah. Did you do that or did I?
No, I didn't do anything.
Oh, you know what it is? That's the post-added audio that I didn't use.
I don't think it's on the,
Are we recording, Jeff?
We are recording.
Wow.
Okay. Believe it or not. Wow.
It's in stereo.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay.
That was perfect.
So are we ready to get this thing rolling?
good.
Yep. Okay. Here we. What are we going to call it?
Nothing.
Episode. Are we going to call it 3? Yeah, we're going to call it 385. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 385.
Daddy's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guide Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Mobile Studio 1A in Oshkosh, EAA Air Venture 2019. Today's show was recorded on the 25th of July, 2019.
Daddy's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Tonight it's flying by. The Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about Oshkosh 2019 EAA Air Venture, actually OshBlast 2019. I'm going to answer all of your questions, and we're going to try. We're going to have a great time. So I'm just vamping until this thing ends. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in your upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 385 is ready for pushback. Applause! Welcome, everybody. We have a huge live audience. Must be, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 people here. Tens of people. Yes, and we're outside of the RV, the Oshkosh Mobile, OshBlast Mobile. What are we calling it?
Gin Palace.
This RV, the Palace, the Gin Palace. Yes. And we have a great crowd here. So many. I look around and I see so many good friends, and then most everybody that I haven't met. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, we need to introduce the people that are going to help me answer all these questions. So, from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, sitting right next to me, she is a doctor, a skydiver, a marathon runner, a strength training junkie, an IPA connoisseur, commercial multi-engine instrument rated pilot. Her name, Dr. Steph.
So glad to see all of you guys here today. This is really awesome. A lot of people here, so that's fantastic. We're looking forward to a really great show and getting all of your participation and feedback today. And I'm happy to be here to help along.
Very good. And also joining us from Oshkosh, he is a professional photographer, a former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, a former captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. First Oshkosh, I'm a virgin. Well, I used to be, but I retired 54 days ago.
The skies are safe. And also from Oshkosh, barbecue master, motorcycle rider, pontoon boat, skipper, underwater photographer, and captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier. His name is Captain Dana.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to see everybody enjoying that great podcast that will include everybody in today. And looking forward to a fun-filled day here in Oshkosh.
Sweet. And we have a very special person who is not normally with us when we do a live show. She's always there, though, in the background. She is from Toronto, and she is our producer, Liz Piper.
Great to be here, and it's great to be with the crew. And I'll be monitoring some questions, hopefully, from the chat room, and let's see where this thing goes.
Let's see where it goes. All right. There we have. We have our introductions here, and now we are going to just start off with, let's see, Captain Nick, would you like to say something about your first experience here at Oshkosh? I guess basically for all of us, even for me, even though I had a little bit of a brief exposure to Oshkosh back, or EA Air Venture back in 2017, just an afternoon, realized that there was no way you could hardly see anything in just an afternoon. So we decided that our big meetup this year would be at Oshkosh, and so we're basically all Oshkosh virgins.
Yeah, it's amazing, Jeff. When I retired, I thought that would kind of be me and aviation put to one side. But this is like my final swan song and a chance to participate in the most amazing air show I have ever been to, and I've been to a few in my life. I find it absolutely remarkable. There are so many wonderful, friendly, happy, aviation-minded people here. We've been wandering around, and they see an old white-haired man, and people will stop and give me a lift, they'll pick me up off the road when I'm drunk. People like show me the way. They keep saying, "Oh, the old people's home, it's over there." And I've had a ball. I really have had a ball so far. It's fantastic. I really want to come back again. So let's do this again in a few years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, let's see, Steph.
Yeah.
This is your first time as well?
It is.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything that sounds like anyone.
Yeah, yes. But yes, first Oshkosh. Obviously known about it for a very long time. This has never really worked out to get up here. It seems like we're always doing something else around this time of year. Or, other but glad to be here. Like everyone else, I think completely just blown away at the scale of the events that happens here. I know everyone knows that I run, so the other morning I went out for a short 10-mile run, but I managed to do it all within the grounds of Oshkosh. I was all the way up to the North 40, all the way down to the South 40, and actually a couple times back and forth in between there to see everything. So nice way to get a lay of the land, kind of see everything that's out there, and then you can kind of focus in and pick out the bits that you want to see in more detail. So I will say the night show last night was by far my favorite so far. That was incredible. Absolutely amazing display going on there, and looking forward to the rest of the week.
Very nice. Hey, Dana, what's your experience been so far?
Well, it's been fantastic. Actually, one of my favorite things about this whole entire experience is meeting everybody here. That's really one of the best things about this whole entire experience, meeting everybody. This is my 4th trip to Oshkosh. I haven't been here, I've kind of lost track, probably about 17 years ago. Hasn't changed a whole lot, other than it's a lot of good times. First time I've ever seen the night show last night as well. It was fantastic. It was the best air show I've ever seen. So, but seriously, I got to go on the, didn't get on the 74-800 because that line was too long, but I did get on the United 787, beautiful airplane, beautiful cockpit. So I would have to say, other than the passenger configuration on that aircraft, it's my favorite aircraft I've ever stepped foot on. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah. I'm good. I'm retired now, so I have no formal affiliation. So, anyways, I was on a 3. It's most of you heard. I was on 330 not too long ago. And it's actually quite a nice aircraft as well. I'm looking forward to the 350 someday. But anyways, Oshkosh, just seeing all the aircraft, hanging out with all the aviation community, especially the ATG community, has been amazing.
It is amazing. Liz, so this is your first time, and what do you think?
It is my first time, Jeff. And I think I just echo what Steph said about the scale. I mean, forget the aircraft. This campground that we're in is immense. And the number of giant RVs is just, it's mind-blowing. I mean, there are people tenting, there are people with smaller pop-ups. I mean, it's just rows and rows and rows of enthusiastic people here looking at planes. But I think Dana said it so well. For me, it's all about the people. I've had online chats with a lot of people here, but then I finally got to meet them and put a face to the name. And that means a lot to me. So thanks everybody for coming today. And thanks for being APG fans. So it's been great.
Yes, and now the best part of the show, which in this case is hearing from all of you, our listeners, APG community. Anybody want to say anything and start off with their experience or question, whatever?
Well, if they don't, it's going to be very short,
It
isn't
will.
it? So,
Yeah, thank you for coming.
I do have a question from the chat room also.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. From Lane Street, Lane is saying, what's everyone's favorite plane that they've seen or they want to see at Oshkosh?
How many people do you think we have here? That's a good guess. Has anyone counted? 40-ish people. I think you'll get 40 different answers, to be fair.
I think he was asking the crew.
Oh, us. Yeah, well, no one cares about ours.
Well, he seems to.
Oh. I don't know. Go ahead, Dana.
B-51 Mustang, beautiful aircraft, and great to see it flying around, especially flying around current military aircraft. And it's absolutely amazing to see that piece of history flying around the sky still.
What? 17 or 18 that are here.
All of them. There's not one they're all beautiful. Good answer if you can't remember their names. F-22, that aeroplane was stunning. I really don't understand why you guys didn't just have the F-22. Obviously, there are some political decisions in there, I suspect. The F-35, I'm sure, will be, in its time, a fine airplane, but that F-22 and the display it put on was fantastic. And for me, an ex-fighter pilot, I was so damn jealous of that guy, of all those guys that will get to fly that machine. And if there's anyone here thinking of starting a career in the United States Air Force, you are one or a bunch of lucky sons of guns, because if you ever get to fly that thing, I'm going to be extremely jealous.
So, can I pick 2?
Sure.
Okay. So I already mentioned I really enjoyed the night show last night, but the Beach 18 was by far my favorite display. That was just very graceful, beautiful. Love seeing how that flying display. Sorry, bug attacking my face. But then static display wise, I have watched a bunch of the YouTube videos. The guy who has the modified Wilga, the Draco, that's just a really cool craft. So to see it up close and in person was pretty neat.
I have to also echo Captain Nick's thoughts about the F-22. Just an amazing display, an airplane that defies aerodynamics and physics and everything else. It's just an incredible machine, and it's loud, which is great for an air show. And the afterburner looked great at dusk last night. Seeing the vector thrust was just amazing.
Yeah, I was so lucky to get some decent pictures of that last night. I have to put them up on the website.
Can't wait to see your photos from that.
Yeah. And then I've always loved seaplanes, amphibians, the Grumman Albatross out there on the flight line. Just looks so pretty. I just love the whole era of seaplanes and amphibians. So that's one of my favorite things. Liz?
I think I really enjoyed the Texans last night.
Yeah.
To Canadians, they're Harvards. But they
Canada.
they put on an excellent show last night, and I really enjoyed seeing them.
That was good.
Jeff, you said about having a little bit of an affinity to the seaplanes. You need to get yourself down to the seaplane.
I do want to do that before we leave.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna risk life and limb here. So when I get to you, just say who you are, because nobody is watching, and then fire away with your question. So.
I'll try not to show my better side of the camera.
Not too late.
Yeah. It's PJ from Houston, Texas. So first of all, I want to. You mentioned seeing the 787. So obviously that's an airline that's flying a large airliner in here without in a place where they don't have airline service. So question for the crew is: have you ever done a flight to an airport where you don't typically serve? What type of extra logistics go into that type of plan?
Oh, that's a good one to get your teeth into, isn't it?
That certainly is.
I want the teacup.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes. Great.
Yeah, somebody
Oh, that
keep track
one.
of
Oh, you
the
want the
best
teacup? Yeah, we do like that. Liz is going to be the arbiter of the best question.
You're the judge.
Most well-designed airliners are pretty self-sufficient. So really all you're looking for is, because, you know, most other things are going to keep going, at least to get you out of that echelon somewhere else where you can be better served. And even on the A340 I used to fly, if we couldn't get Bowsers to pump fuel under the wings, we could open fuel caps on top of the wings and put a hose in there and pump fuel in any which way. So a well-designed airliner, it can go to almost anywhere. You've got your own power unit, your own EPU, your air conditioning, you can provide your own electricity. All you really need is gas, and hopefully the engines will have enough oil in them left to do the next sector. So, and you can get gas in almost any which way. You could even get a guy climbing up on the wing with a jerry can if you really wanted to. But it's feasible. Exactly right. It's feasible. And when we did our captain's course, they covered exactly those kind of circumstances, because they say you divert to some of the remote places in Africa because you've got a problem. It turns out to be benign and you don't need a rescue. We can get you straight out. Then we expect you to be able to refuel your own aircraft, do your own turnaround, get your hands dirty for a change, and then climb back in and get it off the ground. So, yeah, hopefully it should be doable from almost anywhere.
I think the logistics of the passengers, if that's necessary to special handling for the passengers, that's the thing. It's going to be a tough thing. As far as fuel and getting clearances and everything else, as you said, most modern airliners are self-sufficient in that matter.
What about the Mad Dog?
Mad Dog, yeah, oh yeah, we could fly it anywhere.
Yeah, as long as we get our lab stuff, that's the most important thing, really.
Anywhere there is coal, the Mad Dog is welcome.
That's right. Most countries still have clean burning coal. But what else was I going to say? And perhaps if you're going to be there for some time, for whatever reason, the logistics of having food and water and that kind of thing. Again, for the passenger handling, that's going to be the critical.
In all fairness, at Acme, we do have what's called a charter coordinator that actually goes with, like we have the NBA charter. That's one of the things that we do a lot of. They actually own some of our aircraft that we fly from. But so we have a coordinator that takes care of all those other issues. We don't, as a crew, don't necessarily have to get fully involved. They'll take care of all the passenger service issues, aircraft service issues, fueling, all that, local transportation. That's all in the charter coordinator's hands that we provide. So flight planning and all that coordination, as well. Just, you know.
And that's if we were planning to go to a
Right,
place like
exactly.
Oshkosh, but if we divert to somewhere, then yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I was answering the other aspect of it. Yeah, plans.
It was a really good question. Just to add on to that, if I may, I was fortunate in a former life to take the A330 on ad hoc charters, and one of the big factors is have they got a set of steps? Because it's all well and good going there, but if you can't get off it, you've got a problem.
That's where that dog doesn't have a problem.
Well, absolutely. And Nick will relate to this. Just going back to something Dana was saying, from the ETOPS side of things, quite often there are ETOPS alternates that are used that you really, really, really wouldn't want to go to. And there's a place in Canada that's used a lot for planning, which is Churchill.
Yes, sir.
There's not a lot there, as I was informed. And
Polar
the
bears.
biggest problem that you have is that the 330 can't do a 180-degree turn on a standard 45-meter wide runway. So if you land, you're kind of stuck. So, but a really good question. Who wants to come up with one next? Okay, that's an easy one.
Say who you are and
I'm Christian from Seattle, and I was wondering, especially the guys who went down to Fisk to watch the arrivals. Now that you know what it's like, did you ever want to try it yourself?
I would love to. Absolutely. Yes.
A quick question about that. Do you mean try it yourself as in be the controller or fly in?
Oh, rent an airplane or bring your own airplane and fly it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now my airline days are behind me. I would love to do some GA flying perhaps, but it's been expensive, and I'm a very poor man now. So
That's okay, Nick. We'll take care of it. Next year, you and me will fly in.
Cool. Okay.
Nick's coffee fund.
Yeah. So you're relating to the little
There are no
piece
violins here, Nick.
I did little piece I did for our Patreons, because we went up with RH, who is indeed here. I see Dave, Dad. RH is over there. Brilliant. And thanks. It was really nice of you to take me up there, and we had a blast chatting with the controllers and seeing how they do their job. I know RH, well, obviously he works in a little old airfield with grass growing out of the air traffic control tower. They use loud hailers to speak to the aircraft. He was just blown away with the skill and the professionalism of the guys up there, and particularly how well they coordinated, feeding information to the guys with the radio, alerting everyone of what's going on, with an overall supervisor behind, making sure that the aircraft kept their spacing, and if necessary, stepping in and firing people out of the line. You know, you go home. So it was very, very impressive. I'd love to give it a go. I'd like to actually just sit beside someone so I don't carry the can if anything goes wrong. I just, yeah. So Steph could fly me in.
yeah, just a run.
But thank you very much. Great question.
I'm just going to leave the dotem in your lap, all 30 pages of it. I'm sure that I'm doing what it says.
Well, the controllers up there were saying they get people who they don't even believe that they actually read the NOTA. Can you believe that?
Yeah. I've actually done it twice. I brought in my Piper Warrior when I owned it way back when it was going time, just like some people out here have done. And I've also flown in here an Apache Geronimo. Geronimo. So the three of us have going time as well, and that aircraft, 150 horsepower per side. The engine, if one engine quit, the other one would get you in the crash sheet. That thing did not fly very well on its own. So I've done it twice. It's awesome.
Okay, I heard a shout from over this side. Okay.
Hi, my name is Tim, and I'm from Los Angeles area. And
Welcome.
I was wondering, in today's world of GPS and all kinds of precision approaches, do you ever fly a non-precision approach on a regular scheduled flight? And related, do you practice those in the sim?
New York. Would you believe? The gateway to America. There are several approaches into JFK that are non-precision approaches, some of which lead to a visual conversion, which for the 747s and the big airliners come in there can be pretty testing at times. So, yeah, I find it remarkable as well, because people wouldn't believe, really, that one of the busiest and most prestigious airports in the United States doesn't have an ILS set up for every runway. But to be fair, they do. But for various airspace constraints, they have to use non-precision approaches. I still find that remarkable.
Yeah, a lot of the places that we fly the Mad Dog, they'll have ILSs on certain runways because of the wind conditions. We may have to use another runway. And a lot of times they're non-precision approaches. So, and yes, to answer your question, we do routinely, every time we go into the simulator, we do practice non-precision.
And I don't understand why the sim instructor doesn't accept when I say we're declaring an emergency when we're doing NDB approach. It just doesn't like that.
Yeah, we still do NDB approaches because there are a couple of our airports that the Mad Dog serves at Acme that, in certain cases, that may be the only approach, and that really is an emergency.
It really is. I mean, it's actually in some respects a lot easier because we can, with the FMS, we can overlay the approach on our screen so we can actually see it, even though we have to fly the needle. All right, we still can see it.
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
So it really is an easy approach.
Back in the 7.2, we didn't have that, and we were actually using the needle on the ADF to fly those approaches.
There are plenty of airfields where we would fly a back course ILS, which is the fly the ILS backwards with no glide slope, so it is a non-precision approach and requires some thinking about. So, did you guys go to anywhere like that?
Yeah, I think it was one of the Daytona Beach.
Daytona Beach.
Back course. Yeah. To the west.
A number of the Canadian airfields use those. And that's for a one-off when you've only ever really done it in the simulator. That would be an interesting approach.
Albany, Georgia, Steve and I do the same, but we don't fly, Acme doesn't fly that.
College Station.
College Station, we don't fly the regional station. But it's going to be that kind of an airport that has those. Yeah, you have to fly backwards.
Okay, who's up next?
Wait, we have a question from the
I've got one from the
Okay.
chat room. This is from Mike Harrington, and it's for you, Nick, or Colonel Jeff, I guess, could answer it as well. How do you crank a modern-day fighter jet? Do they have keys?
You pull hard.
Yeah, let's let
That's
Colonel
how you
Jeff answer this one because he's even more current fighter pilot than me.
Hi guys, I'm the good-looking Jeff.
And thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Yes, Stephen, by the way, thank you for the picture. The F-15's landed this morning. I'll mimic what Nick said about the F-22. I watched that thing take off last night. What he did took me twice that distance. Do the same thing. It's not fair.
Let's just remember that Colonel Jeff flew an F-15 Eagle. He is an Eagle driver.
Yeah. The F-15 was very easy to start, kind of like starting your lawnmower. There was a handle on the right side of the cockpit. There was one switch you had to make sure was on first, the fuel switch. You turn that, you just pull the handle, and you were firing. It's like starting a lawnmower. And there was no battery in the F-15 for weight. The airplane was designed to be lightweight, so there was no battery. So you would pull that handle, would fire in a hydraulic accumulator that would spin up this little motor about the size of one of these speakers up here, so about 3x3, like biggest. And that connected through a gearbox that would start the engines. It was the only way to start the airplane, unless you were airborne and you wanted to do an air start. If the airplane was on the ground, there was no place to hook up air, nothing. There was no external power, nothing. It was that JFS, and that was it. And it was just simply you lift a little lever on the throttle, it engaged the gearbox, and the engine started. You did one at a time. And the first time you could talk to anybody outside the airplane was when the first generator came online. Because like in the strike eagle, we had two of us. I couldn't talk to the back seater until the JFS came online. The JFS gave me intercom with the crew chief, the back seater, and it gave me fire protection and detection for the JFS, not for the engine. So as soon as the engine came on, if it was on fire, that's when I found out.
Oh, look out the window, maybe.
Sounds like a great design.
Having had that happen, it's really sporty. Especially when the airplane came off the ground, sitting in the chocks, because the JFS exploded.
Wow, great story.
Does the JFS use rocket fuel?
No, it's sucking fuel out of the main tank,
Okay.
and it's a tiny little thing.
The F-16.
And the Hornet was kind of similar.
Let me think how I started the Hornet. Switch, throttle. That was about it, yeah?
And you had things like the Rhino, which Nick flew, the F4, and they could do, what do they call those bang sticks? The plugs? The cart starts. The cart starts.
Oh, no, we were much more sophisticated.
See, in the U.S. Air Force, we had these cartridges, and the B-52s use them as well when they're on alert, where if they don't have external power, external air, it was like a little explosive charge that would literally spin the engine fast enough for it to start. It was quite the detonation.
We have Jim Howard over here who has spent some time in an F4, but he's just a navigator, so we're not going to give him the microphone. Just kidding. I'm sorry. No, give him the microphone. Do you have anything to add to that, Jim?
Hang on.
Oh, hang on. Hold that thought.
And while you transfer, anybody that's late arriving, we ask that everybody stays away from the camper. Do not touch that camper. They're nice enough to allow us to be next to the camper, but we have he's very cautious on his paint job. Also, right up here in front of the camper over here, the red cooler, free beer. So free beer, water, free beer. Free beer. Go get some free beer. Just $50 donation.
I just I kart started a number of times in the Air Force. So normally in the F4 we would have a ground power unit that would give us electrical and air, so that it's like a big hose, like a big wire hose, would plug into the airplane, pump air through the motor, spin them that way. That's easier on the motors. And you only get one chance with the cart. I did one day of air defense alert, and we started it that way. And we did like some Indy 500 days where we tried to generate 1,040s, literally 1,040s a day. And I kart started there. So it was just something you would do. If you went off station and there was no power cart, you would take a couple of carts with you to start. And you couldn't interlock, you couldn't do you had to start them both that way. It wasn't like, I think a T-38 has a switch or something.
Right.
You'd start one, it would start the other by itself. We couldn't do that.
Oh. Very good. Anybody else?
Behind you there.
No.
Josiah Freeman from Phoenix. And my question is for those of us who don't have 1,000 hours to go back and listen to all of the past episodes.
What?
We need you to leave.
Take the mic.
Don't care.
Okay, that's going to come.
So that go around as soon works. Then.
So my question is just if we could get a shorthand story about how the crew got together. Obviously, Captain Duck, you started it, but how did everyone else get on board the crew?
Okay, so I'll try to make it as short as possible. So,
That's what she said.
Sorry.
So I started this back in 2009, September of 2009, I believe. And it was called Catholic Pilot at the time. I was with a Catholic Podcasting Network. I wanted to play with microphones and mixers and all this fun stuff here. I had to have an excuse to start a podcast in a Catholic podcasting network. And I thought, well, I don't really know anything about flying airplanes, barely. And so I thought, I'm going to start a podcast, and I'm going to call it Catholic Pilot. And I found out right away that nobody really cared anything about me talking about Catholicism. They wanted to know everything about flying, the job, the layovers, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, perhaps I should rebrand this thing. So a year and a half after I started, back in I think May of 2011, was the first Airline Pilot Guide show, episode 1. But before that, I had about 40-something Catholic Pilot episodes.
I think maybe it's worthwhile mentioning who's been listening since episode 1.
Well, we have somebody here who is my #1 fan. He started listening to Catholic Pilot episode 1. His name, the guy, the F-15 driver, that's Captain Jack. He's done with us
from day one. Not that he went back. He started. Yes.
Yeah. Well, don't we all?
I don't even have. Yeah, I was thinking for something.
So, did the show solo for, I think, until 2015. Was doing the show just by myself. And I was also at the same time with that Catholic Podcasting Network doing another show. It was a panel show called Catholic Weekend, live show that we did every Saturday morning. So I had some experience with doing shows with, different panelists, different hosts, and getting a lot of feedback. The whole thing is organic. I haven't planned a darn thing with any of this. It's just been what do you call it? Organic evolution of how we
That sounds kind of medical, Liz.
place, whatever.
That's Just an organic growth. I was like,
Organic growth, yeah. Well, I guess in a way it is. But so I got a lot of feedback. Well, I have to acknowledge Dana was the very first person that I actually had as a co-host on the show, but it was just a one-off.
Tony.
Episode 90, if you want to check it out. We were flying together. I had a long Savannah layover, and I was talking. He was telling me about his experience because I'm always asking my first officers what their background is because so many people that listen to the show want to know how to get to here. And I thought, wow, I've never heard anybody with that kind of background and how you got here. And I said, I'm doing a show today, a podcast, I said. And he kind of looked at me like, what's a podcast? And so I explained it to him. And I said, I think we got in pretty early, before noon. Yeah, it was around noon. And I said, come over to the room. And he's probably going, this guy. Right. Yeah, so he was on the show and he answered a lot of questions about his background and everything, and a lot of good feedback. And that was Tony. That was in 2013, October of 2013, I think Halloween Day.
Ironically, episode 90 of MD.
Yeah, well, it just happened that way. Anyway, so fast forward, 2015, getting a lot of feedback from staff. Mostly, did you ever send an audio feedback?
No.
Email feedback.
Yeah.
She said she heard me talking about beer, IPAs. And she goes,
Yeah, I wasn't sending any like aviation.
No, it's all about
It was just like, you like IPAs, I like IPAs.
Yeah. And so she goes, hey, if you ever have a layover in Charlotte, let me know. I'll come by and show you what North Carolina has to offer as far as IPAs and other styles of beer. Okay, I'll take you up on that. So we did that a couple of times.
Yeah, I think we actually did it twice.
Yeah.
Without any podcasting involved.
Right. And then like the third time, I had a very long layover in Charlotte. It was downtown. I knew she worked downtown. And I said, hey, and in hindsight, I'm thinking, this is really kind of creepy. I said, if you'd like to be my co-pilot on the show, I'm in this hotel room.
Yeah.
This,
And I think I said no. And then I was like, but there's beer involved.
So she shows up to my hotel room, probably thinking, what is going on?
Like with, yeah. Small knife, just in case.
That's the first I'm learning about. Anyway, so we did the show together, got a lot of positive reviews with that, and then a couple of weeks later in Miami, we'd already done several meetups in Miami. Miami Rick, of course, or one of the co-hosts. No, I'm sorry. He was an avid listener. He was sending in a lot of audio feedback. That's the way people become involved, I think, in podcasts and become podcasters on their own. They end up sending in a lot. So if you're listening to people sending in a lot of audio pod or feedback, they're probably going to become a host of somebody else's show or start their own show. Like Jim likes to send us audio feedback. When are you going to start your show?
It's a long story. I lost my recording studio, so
that's right.
Well, in the future, we'll be looking forward to the Just a Navigator joke.
So anyway, getting a lot, just the Navigator. So Miami Rick was sending in a lot of feedback, was very enthusiastic, and so I was down there in Miami, and we had a meetup planned, and he said, hey, I'm not working today. If you need to go someplace, I can take you to the meet. I said, oh, if you're not working, I'm planning on recording before we do the meetup, and why don't you come by, and you can become my co-pilot for the day. And he said, sure. So we did that, and again, a lot more positive feedback regarding that. And then I think it was not long after that, I contacted both Steph and Rick and said, would you guys consider doing this all the time with me? And I said, I know the technology they use to get everybody together. We use Skype, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Skype at the time.
Yeah, I was doing the video, but it was kind of weird because you couldn't see them. You could only see me, and then I put their pictures up. And it was kind of clunky. It didn't work there. It's
fine.
And so, yeah, that became the airline pilot guy with co-hosts, panel content. And then later that year, we started getting a lot of audio feedback from the old curmudgeon. And we had a special surprise.
Well, there's other folks here who were involved in that surprise show.
Yeah.
Jeff probably doesn't know a lot of what happened behind the scenes here, so.
Well, the main instigator sitting right
in front of you.
Tell us about how you organized that.
It's difficult, really, because it's a little while ago, but it just kind of came as just a momentary thought. Well, if there's a monumental moment coming up, 100, 200, okay, well, maybe we can put something together. So I kind of raised the idea just in a sort of little private chat with myself and Steph and Rick. And then I thought, well, Pip, who sat to my left, you know, got some sort of connection. And then obviously Nick, who sat next to you. So why don't the three of us come out? And it's probably worthwhile mentioning that prior to the flight out to Miami, none of the three of us had ever met each other. So 3 pilots on a flight going on a bit of a whim to Miami. It had all the recipe for a complete and utter disaster.
And that's what it was. No, it wasn't.
If you watched the 200th episode, you know.
Yeah.
But it was literally just what about we do this? So, I mean, Pip sat next to me. What's your memories of it?
It was a little bit, almost not just.
Oh, it was a lot of alcohol.
Well, you were late.
Well, no,
obviously, to the airport as usual.
The lead up to the actual event, like the.
I remember I came fairly late. I remember getting an email from Rick saying, "Hey, coming to the States, get on a plane, get your suitcase packed." No, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of planning. There was a lot of making up cover stories.
Yeah, there was a lot of lying.
Yeah. Yeah. What I was hearing from my end is.
So the story was I had a conference to attend
Medical conference
in Miami. And so I was going to be down there. Rick was obviously there. You were going to be, well, we said, oh, you know, it's going to be right around the time of the 200 show. Can you get a trip to be in Miami with a layover, blah, blah, blah.
No, actually, you said, don't do a layover.
Yeah. We said we want you to be there. We need you to be there.
Right,
So
for more than just a layover.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did say that. Like, we're both going to be there. Like, this is the perfect
They kept
excuse to
nagging
do.
me. Are you sure you
He sent a lot of emails.
And I'm going, what's the big deal? So if I'm there, whatever, you know? So I had no idea. That
Rick
was a
got
surprise.
Colonel Jeff involved. He said, you should be here for this as well as listener number 1. And
the funny thing for me was when I raised this as a possibility with my wife, she was actually very concerned that I had joined some sort of cult.
Well, in a way, she was
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Aviation podcasting cult.
And several years later, she still doesn't actually understand.
here you are again with this cult.
So what do you remember, Jeff? Because we were hiding in a bar the day before the live show.
Yeah.
And that
So-
you were sort of told to pitch up.
So I flew down from Atlanta to Miami. Rick picked me up, and he goes, "Hey, we've been to this barbecue restaurant before." And he goes, "Let's go to this rib place. You know, are you hungry?" I said, "No." and he goes, "Okay." And then we go to the barbecue rib restaurant. I'm going, "Well, does he not
I
understand?"
was delayed getting there, and I was supposed to be there in advance. So Rick had to do some covering for me.
Yeah,
because
that was the first hint that something
something
was
wasn't
odd.
quite right.
And so, okay, so we had, you know, I watched him eat. And then we were driving around. I don't know where he was taking us. So I guess to the place that we were going. Oh, we were going to do I knew we were going to do a live show at the Titanic Brewing Company because Rick and I had done that once before. So we were heading down that way, and he goes, "Oh, I need to stop at a CVS, a drugstore." And I went, "Okay."
He's
And then-
still delaying for me because I'm frantically like texting Rick, like, "Okay, I got a car. Like, I need to go drop some stuff at the hotel, and then I need to go." Yeah, I was running all around town just trying to stay one step ahead of you guys.
And I was just going, "Oh, I'll just stay in the car." Thankfully, that was what he was hoping I would do because he was going
He was
into the
texting
drugstore to
Calling
communicate
me.
with her, yeah.
I know where I was.
So he comes back out. I don't know what he bought, some aspirin.
And of course, the three of us who had been consuming champagne courtesy of this fantastic former airline just needed all the logistics doing for us. We just needed to roll off the airplane drunk and be taken somewhere.
And you guys were already at the
Wow.
at the brewery at that point. So, and then I did actually get there, but I was like, well, I don't want to like go
Yeah,
in.
I've got a picture of you peering in at the window.
I know. I was tired and confused. That's fine. It'll
Pip has
work
just
out.
handed me a
Oh yes,
photo
yes. This is
of all of us
that's great.
there. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us. Yeah, so we finally made it over to Titanic Brewing Company and parked in the back, walking around, and then on the front of the brewery, like I would look down near the entrance, and I thought I saw what appeared to be a head that looked like Steph's head poking around. I'm thinking, what's she doing? Yeah, and I'm thinking, that's odd. But again, I still haven't figured anything out. We walked in, yeah, I'm still clueless. I've never ever had a surprise party in my life, and this is my first one. So I walked in, went up to the bar, and thought, I'm going to get an IPA. And so I'm standing about 3 feet away from the bar, and I feel this tap on my shoulder. And I turn around, and there's this bloke handing me an IPA. And I look, I'm looking at somebody's chest. And I look up, and I hear him say something. And I'm thinking, that voice sounds so familiar. And I'm thinking, Captain Nick? And then he goes, yeah, I don't know what you said.
I think I do have the video of that.
And it was
Or
like, I didn't imagine him being so tall, 6'4". I don't know why. I just thought he was that long. And then I looked around, and then these two started talking, and I thought, that voice sounds familiar. Captain Al? And then Pip, or maybe it was the opposite. I don't know. I don't remember the order, but these two were standing 3 in a row, and that's when I realized, oh, this is more than just doing an on-location thing. That's I realized it was a surprise at that point. It was awesome, and that was just the beginning.
It's actually really funny from our side of things, because it's, if you've ever been involved in a surprise party, it's that priceless moment when the person realizes what's actually going on, because you can see the cogs going around and the building blocks slowly being put together.
I mean, in Jeff's case, they were going around real slow.
Yeah, he had to take me aside and explain it to me.
If you have not watched the 200th episode, we certainly tell people not. You don't have to go back and watch all of them, but watch episode 200.
Skip the end, though, because it gets a little emotional. You don't want to see me cry, really.
You do.
Well, so I don't know how this happened, but we had pints of beer. It was a brew pub. And I'd be drinking my beer and put it down, and then I looked back around, and it was like full, and so I started drinking more. I never got more than half empty. And I just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. So
Al wouldn't have anything to do with us.
No, Al had
No, not at all. Nothing to do with me. But it was part of my my objective for that night, that nobody would have an empty glass. And I'm reasonably satisfied that I fulfilled that objective.
Yes, you did. So we had a great time. So that during that time, because Nick had been sending in all this audio feedback, I took Steph and Rick aside and said, would you guys mind if I invited Nick to become a full-time host of the show? And they said, oh, no, he'd be great. Well, actually, that's not what they said. But
Jeff didn't really care what our opinions were. He was just doing it.
No, I did. And so they said, yeah, it was unanimous. Oh, yeah, he'd be great. And so at that 200th episode, or within a day or whatever, I asked Nick if he'd like to be a host of the show. And he said,
I tried.
Absolutely.
I tried a lot, and then I said, no, thank you very much. I'm for life.
I think he said something like, I'd be honored to be a guest. But at least in my mind, that's what I remember.
So where was Dana?
Well, Dana was still flying airplanes and completely oblivious to the fact that we were doing a podcast. Now, I saw Dana about almost exactly 3 years after he did the one-off episode 90 in the Atlanta airport in the B concourse food court area. That's B spine. And I hear somebody say, hey, Jeff! And so he goes, oh, you don't remember my name, do you? And because I knew him as Tony. I said, no.
The look on his face was precious.
Yeah.
Almost like, who you?
And so he goes, hey, we're flying next week. And I said, yeah, I saw that. And I said, he goes, are you still doing that podcast thing? I said, yeah, we're still doing it. And I said, in fact, I plan on doing a show when we're on our trip next week to Orlando. Would you like to be on the show again? Would you like a redo of 2013 episode? He goes, that'd be great. And we were in Orlando and well-oiled. And we had not suntan lotion or baby oil, but bourbon, I think. And
Do you remember the size of the bottle I went and bought?
Yeah, he bought this bottle. It's like, I don't know, a Magnum or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's 1.75 liters. It's a bourbon, Eagle Rare, which is a very nice bourbon. And it was at the Publix, and anybody's Florida or familiar with Florida, Publix has a liquor store attached to it. And very rarely up in Georgia had I ever seen a 1.75 liter bottle. So I said, well, so I bought the whole damn thing.
And I had my 6-pack of High Life, which I happen to be holding in my hand. Favorite IPA.
You kept it all that time?
Yes, this is. And so it just evolved into Dana becoming part of our regular crew.
Yeah, we talked about it after the show and said, well, I'd be open to it.
So Rick,
Rick was abducted by aliens.
Yes, as far as we
The
know.
official story.
Yeah. No, he had gotten a new job with a new airline, and he was based, almost halfway around the world, and most of his flying was literally on the other side of the world. It's very difficult to schedule. It's one of the toughest things about doing the show is organizing all of our schedules to get everybody together at the same time. We do this every single week. So the first thing we do after we stop the broadcast is we go, okay, next week, let's talk about it. What's everybody's schedule? Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes somebody can't make it for whatever reason. But we really do try to make sure that all four of us are on the show together as much as we can. And with Rick, it was just impossible for him to be there because we'd be recording when he was sleeping or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we miss him. Rick, if you're listening, come back. We love you.
Open invitation.
We love you. Open invitation.
Play the cricket.
Yeah.
I don't have the crickets here.
See, I have this problem, and they give me a bad time. I can't find one.
You have the crickets? I don't have the crickets.
Okay. Oh, well, someone has.
I've read through everything. There's no crickets.
That's very funny. But there are some. Yeah. Okay.
The rickets. Well done. Yes, exactly.
Right. So anyway, that's how we have evolved into this. The four regulars, and then how long ago was it that we asked you to become 18 months, about a year and a half ago? A lot of things that happen behind the scenes. All you podcasters here know that. A lot of planning and organization and everything else, and Liz was a big participant in our community, and I asked if she would like to become an assistant/producer, and she does a heck of a lot of work. Really offloads a lot of my work.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, how much work she does during the week and the lead up to a show. We get continual updates of what's happening to the show notes and adding and taking things out. And that's only what we see as co-hosts. Jeff and Liz are constantly in contact, talking about what the next show is going to look like. So she does a marvelous job.
Yes, she does. We could do it without her, but it wouldn't be as good. And by the way, any of you who have sent in feedback and you haven't heard us cover it, it's because of her. She says it doesn't meet the standard.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on the move again.
Okay.
This arthritis and stuff.
And everybody, just so you know, I actually do drink beer.
I see that.
I actually see.
But didn't you say last night you don't drink beer?
Can I fill in with a quick question while you're on your way out?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a question from the chat room. Pilot Boy. Pilot Boy is asking a question.
Oh yeah, Pilot Boy.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten a GPWS 1,000 feet call out at altitude if a plane passes underneath you?
Yes. Easy answer.
Yeah, it is quite common, particularly on the Atlantic tracks, when because our navigation systems are so accurate, we're all basically on the same track at the same going the same way, same day. It was common when someone overtook you underneath, or you overtook them to get the call out, because the airplane sees the radar bouncing off the aircraft underneath and thinks that it's 1,000 feet, which can be a bit alarming. Particularly if the guy's crept up from behind you and you didn't know he was there, and all of a sudden you go 1,000 feet. You go, what? What the hell's that? But yeah, it is a problem with. I say problem. In the old days when people navigated using radio aids, aircraft naturally weren't on the exact center line of an airway. Nowadays, everyone is absolutely down the dead center. Oh, doesn't that sound like that? Dead center. And of course, it actually increases the likelihood of collisions because everyone's flying the same track. So on the North Atlantic track, now we, in theory, randomly offset by 1 or 2 miles, just so that that reduces that chance. And even there are some places like China where the air traffic controllers will tell you to offset, and you'll be given an offset and you'll fly it just because that's the way they think it's the safe way to go. It's not a bad way to go at all. But in my company, because most pilots are lazy, they couldn't be bothered to fly the offset. They said, right, we're going to give you an offset. It will be dependent on the initial of your surname. So because I was an Anderson, I flew down the center line. That's my excuse.
Nick, on the 330, you will know that because it's such a quiet flight deck, that if an aircraft passes over the top of you at 1,000 feet, you actually hear it.
Oh, for sure, yes. You often wonder if the passengers did. They're probably watching movies or asleep there. But I was underneath Concorde once when it went over me at over 60,000 feet. So there's probably 35,000 or 30,000 feet between us. But I clearly heard the double boom as Concorde went over the top. Very impressive. He was going the opposite direction. I could see him trailing. It was obvious who it was because there's nobody else up there, for heaven's sake. And sadly, my first officer was having a pee. So I was the only guy, because I could see him, I was the only guy that really knew what was going on. I was going all for myself. I was like, oh, that's cool.
We heard that folks over there near the road are having a difficult time hearing us. If we could just crank the speaker around, so the way Dana wanted to put it initially, I didn't think we'd have a bunch of people over there. So hopefully you'll be able to hear us a little bit more. We can't really turn up the volume much more because we're going to start getting some feedback. But anyway.
Yeah, and thank you all for not leaning against the other motorhome. We appreciate that.
Yeah, he asked us not, you know,
I know it's tempting
nobody
to, but
connection. And he said, don't be too loud. But I wanted to stop the show or interrupt the show for a moment. Jim Mercado, I just noticed he arrived. Jim. Okay, this t-shirt, many of you are already wearing it, the OshBlast2019 logo, and the original Acme Air logo is this man's magic and his skill and everything else. So, Jim, thank you very much for that. Awesome. Oh yeah, we ran out. Sorry. No, we still have some. Anyway, we want to hear from you sometime later in the show. But I'm glad you made it from Northern California, and look forward to visiting with you. Thanks again. Great design. Okay.
Okay, I'm back out in the APG suburbs here. So
I'm Mark from Swansea in the UK, another Osh first timer.
Another Welshman. Two Welshmen together. I'm supposed to start singing now.
Yeah, like always, we have some connection between us in Wales. It's impossible not to.
Although we're not related, as far as we know.
You share the same sheep?
Anyway, my question is particularly for Captain Dana and Captain Jeff. You've covered this fantastic RV this time. There's some great historic aircraft here at Oshkosh. What do you think the chances of you and Captain Dana talking to flight ops at Acme and next year to bring a mad dog for us all to meet him?
Oh, there'll be none left flying.
I was going to say, we might have to go in the desert and grab one for you.
I'd love to do that. That would be a lot of fun.
Actually,
I think the good news is that when I went to pick Pip up in Appleton, I actually saw a train that had coal trucks on it. So I think it's good
very
chance.
similar. Yeah.
Actually, got some really good news while I was here in Oshkosh. Everybody had heard me talk about the fact that I was moving backwards down the rung in seniority. They've decided to keep 8 more additional MDEs on property, because Airbus can't seem to get the 321 Neo to us in time. So I'm going to move back up in seniority. So it's not going to be quite in the desert quite as quick. It's going to be with us at least through 2021.
Yeah, and hopefully until 2023 December.
Have to wait that long?
Yes.
Get out of my way. Only kidding.
He's not.
Right.
Liz?
We have another one from the chat room from Mark Lebrowski. This is kind of for you stuff, I think, that the others can chime into. Okay. What level of pilot certification do you need to be able to distinguish the individual components of an IPA?
I mean, it's a rather advanced skill, so I wouldn't expect just your basic private pilot to be able to do that, but no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, there's a 30-page ACS, which thank you for correcting us on that. It's not the PTS anymore. What does ACS stand for again?
Airman Certification Standards.
Airman Certification Standards. Okay. So Yeah, there's a separate one for IPAs, and it's very detailed and complex, and you have to be kind of have to try a whole lot of different IPAs to get a good feel.
And that, yeah, you schooled me on that. You know, I thought I was an expert, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
Steph, that's why she needed to be.
So even someone with an airline transport pilot,
Not
you know,
necessarily.
needed a tutorial.
Yes.
Yeah. But we should. Yeah, this is an endorsement. That's right. Yeah, we should start a workshop for that here at Oshkosh. I think. Yeah.
We have several
IPA.
different ones here in the RV that we can start sampling.
They actually have a workshop in here. It's called AA in the morning. In the morning.
And just a reminder, we do have that cooler over there that has, well, I'm assuming it still has beer.
There might be beer.
And we're in it if anybody is.
Dave is indicating that there is still beer in the cooler. So if anyone is, it's hot out there today, so make sure you hydrate.
Yeah, we're actually really comfortable here with this on it. Sorry.
So I've got a hazy rabbit. What's your opinion on that?
I like the hazy rabbit. This is the second one I've
Lakefront Brewery, very good. If there's a Lakefront Brewery
Milwaukee,
representative listening,
Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
we'd be
So the
welcome.
local
I have some more with that.
We have a question back here.
Jeff, my name is Derek Aircraft.
Oh, nice.
Traffic controller where? I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
So, hey, have you ever heard my voice on the radio?
You guys all sound the same.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
They're a bunch of deviants.
20 minutes ago, I like the way you said this. You said that you'd like to get an idea of the experience the first officer that you're flying have. As someone that's getting ready to start pilot training, someone that works with you guys every single day, I am curious to know, bear with me with this question. I'm curious to know, with your studios in aviation in general,
No way.
This is important. How do we get really certified airmen in the cockpit to not feel intimidated by someone who's got more experience in than excuse me, to their life? I guess we're talking about subjective and objective that may not be presented. So a lot of guys, for example, IOE, the flight deck, walking by your experience. Hey, we're going to go through a thunderstorm, for example, here at Hartsfield. Hey, here we are.
Yeah.
It's a point where I think someone may not speak up in a certain moment.
You know, I'd say close to 100% of it is the way that you initially start your conversation with your fellow crew member that you've never flown with before,
right.
and making them understand how they're just as important as everybody else in the cockpit, which is just usually two of you, and that what they feel and what they know and all that is just as important as this person who's been flying for this company for 30 years. And you have to, there are some people that don't do a very good job of that. And I remember it as when I was a first officer. I fly with some of these captains. They'd immediately just slam that door shut and make it known that don't talk to me unless, you know, I ask you to talk. It's not necessarily saying that, but the way they behaved and the way they talked and the way they ran the cockpit was just like, okay, I'm just somebody that's going to talk on the radio when he's flying, and I'm going to fly the airplane, and then he's going to tell me how to do everything. And that's just, you know, CRM, this is what this is all about, basically. Cockpit resource management, crew resource management, whatever you want to call it. It's very, very important to just establish that tone in the cockpit, that we're together, we're a team. You know, I usually say, hey, we're here to have fun. You know, usually weather or mechanical issues are going to be the things that make it not so fun. But there's no reason for everything else to be just a pleasant experience. And that's by just having an open cockpit, making that person understand that they are equals as far as sharing information. And being, as a first officer, you're basically learning to be a captain. And many people who are first officers at Acme and other major airlines, they have been captains. So they have experience with this. But you want to be sure to model what you think is the appropriate behavior of the captain. You want to, as a first officer, you pay close attention to what's happening with this captain you're flying with, and you basically say, yeah, I like what he's doing here. I like the kind of more laid-back environment in the cockpit, but it's serious when it needs to be. Or I'm mostly writing down your little tablet, notepad. I'm definitely not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. That's usually, I think, for most of us, that experience. But that's what I have to say about that. Just establishing that environment, that tone, that, you know, this is that's the best job in the world, and let's don't screw it up by, you know, not having fun doing what we're doing. We have a lot more ideas and opinions about this, I'm sure, because a lot of airline captains here. Yeah.
Well, being that I'm a newly minted captain, I have to absolutely agree with Jeff 100%. And that's, you've heard me say it on the show, the biggest thing that I enjoy about being captain, the best thing I enjoy about being captain is setting that tone. And there's no I in team, right? There's me, but right? But there's no I in team. So I always make sure that my FOs understand that they're the captain when they're flying. I'm not going to tell them how to fly the aircraft. I'm not going to micromanage them. And I make sure they open up the conversation. And as Jeff said, as soon as I walk into the flight deck, you ask them their name, shake their hand, and bring open that open communication. Because if you don't have that dialogue, then they're not, then you lose them. They're there to help you. And one of the best things, and you kind of mentioned it there, is what I learned from all the captains that I flew with through all the years I was an FO, and I pretty much made a mental note as to how I wanted to be as a captain. And I don't want to be that guy that everybody, I'm on that list that everybody doesn't want to fly with. I want to be on the list that everybody wants to fly with because I treat everybody fairly. And the other thing is being a big picture guy. All right, if you sweat the small stuff and let all those little nuances get to you, then that's going to make you a terrible guy. It's going to, you know, you may, you know, you got to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure everything's legal and everything's good. But it's the big picture stuff that I look at. The stuff that's going to get me in trouble. It's going to hurt people. Going to bend metal. That type of stuff. That's what I look at. And it's diplomacy and being good. The way I look at it.
It's a great question, sir, but I'm going to turn it on its head slightly and tell you what I was asked when I did my interview with Virgin Atlantic. I said, well, you're a military guy, you've got over 20 years of professional flying experience. How are you going to feel climbing into the right-hand seat, the first officer seat, with a younger captain? Because a lot of our captains are quite young. Our airline had the youngest, at one point, had the youngest ever 747 captain. And people got promotion fast, and if young guys joined the company, they were going to be younger in age to me. And I didn't really have a problem, because I think you accommodate, you learn that in life you're going to get past the point where the people underneath you who looked up to you, now you're going to start on the downhill curve and they're going to be on the rise, and you'll be looking up to them. And you just have to bear in mind that, as one of my old Air Force bosses once told me, never slam a door, because one of these days the bloke who is behind that door you slam will end up being your boss. So yeah, I think it's we all have to be flexible. We all have to be what's the word? Empathic, empathetic. Yeah, I'm pretty pathetic. So and be a good people person, and that's one of the great skills of being an airline pilot.
Steve, like either. Stephen,
no, not him.
Stephen Ivy here is a new first officer, well, relatively new.
Could be a year next month.
Okay, almost a year. So you have experience flying with captains, and what's from your perspective? What is it that makes you feel comfortable and like you're somebody who's a significant person in that cockpit?
Well, when you first start out, you know, you're coming off of IOE, you're already nervous about flying the actual airplane with people on it. And then once you get after that, you kind of get into, you know, the motion and get used to it. But then you start flying with the line captains, which are totally different than your regular check airmen. So you can have different ends of the spectrum. You can have a guy that's extremely by the book, and we'll sit there and drill you with questions about your SOPM, about sit planning, about using the FMS, all this other stuff. Then you get the other guy that's going to be sitting left seat and doesn't do anything but answer the radio calls, doesn't even talk to you the whole time. So figuring out how to interact with that person, engage with them, and both have that same mental model of flying the airplane is something you're not going to learn until you're out there for a couple of months. And then especially, if you've been flying by yourself, like I was most of the time building, you don't have that crew interaction. So learning that skill is a hard thing to do. And then also, I'm only 29, but I've had guys that are younger than me that have been my captains. I can go ahead and tell you the level of professionalism isn't the same as you get a guy that's, upwards of Jeff's, seniority or Dana's. And then they don't have certain experiences. Newly minted captains, they generally don't understand how to deal with certain operational things that come up that some senior captains might. I got stuck in Quincy, Illinois because the fuel truck broke, and his solution was just wait it out till they figured it out, and I was just sitting there suggesting things the whole time to try to get us out of it because, that's what they're supposed to do to get on to your next destination. So finding that middle ground of where you're not being condescending towards him, you're not making it uncomfortable up there for you. It's a really hard thing to learn because some guys don't appreciate you giving them feedback about their flying, and even first officer like me, you don't really appreciate it when someone tells you that you landed suck. But you got to be accepting of all criticism, regardless of what's going on up there. It's your job. And if you're not learning while you're flying, even as an airline pilot, you're not really progressing yourself in your career.
I've heard it said you need to be a little bit of a chameleon. Right? You need to adapt to.
You do, but you need to adapt in the good aspects.
Right, in a positive way.
The regional I work for, we're one of the largest. Take a lot of pride in our product that we provide. We're supposed to be one of the most professional. And then you're walking around the terminal. I've been down to Charlotte before. You see some American wholly owns. They got the shirt untucked, it's wrinkled, they got sunglasses on their head, their earbuds in, walking around the terminal, just like they're walking around the dormitory. You can't do that as a pilot. You're supposed to present yourself professional, because you don't want to be boarding up the airplane and then see that passenger that saw you with your shirt hanging out and your sunglasses on your head. Like, this guy really going to be the guy that's going to take me wherever I'm going. So you're just always going to be aware of yourself when you're presenting that professional image out there.
Thanks, Stephen.
I've got one from the chat room now.
Go ahead.
This is from Greg Peterson, who I think Jeff and Nick visited on their way up to. Greg says, for Jeff, Nick, and Dana, what are your favorite aircraft that you've flown in your careers?
My favorite aircraft. Actually, people are going to laugh at me. Normally, I'd say the Mad Dog because it's absolutely my favorite aircraft. But beyond the Mad Dog, because I love that aircraft. I would have to say the Brasilia. I loved flying that aircraft. It was fun. It was sporty. It was very challenging to operate the aircraft smoothly. So that really was my favorite aircraft I've ever flown.
From my point of view, I think the Phantom will always have a place in my heart. But when I stepped up to the F-18 and climbed into that plastic airplane, I just saw aviation, military aviation, through a completely different set of eyes. And I was just so blown away with the capabilities of the F-18 and the skill of the McDonnell Douglas engineers and designers who built that aircraft. And that was a real moment of pride for me when I did my first solo in I loved the 3 years I spent flying it. Absolutely fun.
And while Jeff's busy over there, I can probably answer the question for him if he talks about it extensively. It's actually my favorite aircraft ever built. You would say either one of two, but I would think he would say L-1011 is probably his favorite aircraft he's ever flown. And that personally is my favorite aircraft ever flown.
There you go. My brother used to call it the Death Star.
Why?
Why?
We had to engineer it.
Okay, I'm back on the move again.
One L-1011 actually ever had.
Hey guys, I'm Nigel. This is a physiological aeromedical question, probably best answered by Dr. Steph. What is poo-pourri, and how do the APG crew use it operationally?
So this is a vital piece of equipment when there are 5 of us in the recreational vehicle and 1 foot. It's a, I think it's gosh, who makes it right? I don't know. I'm getting a little commercial for them right now, but I discovered it after going on a cruise that we do annually with people with friends, where it's similar close quarters and 1 small bathroom. But it does work great to just make sure that there's no noxious odors floating around in the RV after someone.
You need to explain how it's used.
So
and how many sprays you asked me to put down the room.
Well, it gives a recommended range, right? So it comes in a small spray bottle. It says there's 100 sprays per bottle. You're supposed to shake it a little bit. The one we have is citrus fresh, I think, so very lemony.
Shake what a little bit?
The bottle. Products. I don't want to know about what you're doing when you're in there actually using it. But you take the bottle, it says 3 to 5 sprays. So I asked Nick, please make sure you use 5. Why not? Why take any chances?
You didn't tell me to use any.
It's because I didn't know that's what you were going in there to do. And I can't, explain all the physics of it, because I'm sure there are some, but it kind of coats the you have to have some water in the toilet bowl to make sure some water in the toilet bowl goes in there, it coats the area, and then you do your business and flush the toilet, and it's supposed to be much more pleasant for not only you, but everyone who has to be in the vicinity thereafter.
So it's like a pre-flight checklist.
Yes. Got to make sure you use the poo-pourri. Thank you, Nigel, for that question.
I think that might be the best question of the day.
So I'd like, for those who are watching this on YouTube Live, sorry, for some reason, one of the components that we send in nice audio to you is not working. And for some reason, this dongle on the MacBook is not recognizing the message. Yeah, it's a technical failure, sorry. And they're saying everything is just horrible sounding on the YouTube video. Keep trying to fix it, but it's not working.
That's what she said.
Okay, I'm on the move again. I'm going to need some assistance because the APG washing line is in front of me.
We can use my mic if you want the question.
Okay, that'll work.
My name is Andre. I'm from southwestern suburbs in Chicago.
Is it you that has Pip's suitcase? Because Pip's suitcase is currently missing in action in Chicago.
No, that's not me.
Okay, we'll let you off.
So, from your experience in Oshkosh so far, what are you looking forward to the most for your Friday, Saturday, and possibly Sunday?
Well, that's an easy question for me. I'll go ahead and get started. I definitely want to get out to the seaplane base. I'm planning on doing that tomorrow at some point. If anyone's interested in heading down there.
Go.
All right, so Jeff and I will be heading down to the seaplane base tomorrow at some point. I'm not sure when, but we'll firm up those plans and let y'all know. I think that's probably one thing I really haven't seen or looked into yet. And I do have my single engine C certificate, which I have not used since I actually got the rating, but it'll be fun to get down there and have a cool time.
You're not going to like this answer, but here's the answer. I'm looking forward to sleeping in my own bed this weekend because I haven't been home in about a month and a half, more than one night at a time. So, but it's been an unbelievable week. I'm leaving tomorrow.
And sadly, Jeff and I are packing up the RV. We have to get it back to Arizona on Saturday. So tomorrow I'm going to do the Warbirds, which I gather is just the place to be, and it's definitely on my list. I wish I could have ticked off everything that was on my list, but I'm just going to have to do that another year. But tomorrow's the Warbirds.
We're flying in next year, so.
Oh, so you get Christmas? Yeah, absolutely. So it'll Saturday morning. I'm afraid we'll be packed up.
I have a question from the chat room, and you may have just answered it, but this is from Kelly Kirk. This is for you, Captain Nick. Any thoughts or plans while you're still at Oshkosh to hook up with Jello and Sunshine? Now, I'm not sure who that is,
Hello, and can anyone help me?
Thank you.
Oh, the Fighter Pilot podcast.
Over at the FPP to compare US and UK aviation.
Well, that would be an interesting discussion, best conducted over many beers, and probably running into the wee hours and never resolved. But
And I can imagine there'll be lots of hands flying. Because whenever you get military pilots
no
and
hands
beers
in the
together.
bar. Sorry, no hands in the bar. That's forbidden. You poke people's eyes out. Easy when you got a Jaguar squadron, because you just sit there and say, "That's you. This is me. 1 mile behind." It makes Jaguar pilot right there. Sorry, guys. I didn't get that in. If someone sends me a pin, I'm going to go over there and say hello to those guys. Thank you.
Okay, I'm on the move again. I'm fearful that if I go too far, the whole lot is just going to collapse.
Yeah,
into
you
the
need to get
gear.
people to stand up and come to you.
I'll stop you.
Good day, everyone. My name's Evan. I'm all the way from Melbourne in Australia. I got to see your live show and not from YouTube, so this is pretty cool. My question to the panel and maybe anyone else is, being that we're meeting on the hallowed grounds of the Experimental Aircraft Association, have you seen any crazy experimental designs that you would or definitely wouldn't go for a fly in?
I've seen lots of crazy designs. I can't remember what any of them are called off the top of my head, but I would probably not fly in any of them.
I walked past one of Bert Ruthen's one-off designs, and it had a four-letter skip or a skip.
Criz. C-R-I-Z. C-R-I-Z.
Oh, Criz. That's right. Yeah, yeah. And it was the weirdest looking piece of kit. It had a fore-wing and an aft wing that were joined together from the tips. The tips of the fore-wing led into the leading edge of the aft wing. Both wings had enormous solid flaps and the tailplane. And I was just looking at it going, what the hell is this? And apparently it was a DEFRA, is that the organization? Secret, super,
DARPA.
DARPA. Very nice.
DARPA.
DARPA. Oh, American. So DARPA, and they, Bert Rudin designed it for them for a hostage. Apparently was not required and never used, only one ever built. But it was designed for ultra short takeoff and landing. Looked fascinating, with all that flap on it. I suspect it would have been brilliant. But I often wondered, he must be a genius, because he didn't really. Usually an airplane design goes through prototypes and goes test flying, etc., etc. He only built one to do this one job, and it's so radical. I was looking at it going, that's just amazing. To be the genius he is, to get it to actually work and potentially do that job, I was just amazed that he would have got it right the first time. And no, I wouldn't want to fly.
I have what might be one of our last questions, Jeff. I think we're getting to that point soon. This is from Rob, Dick, Hamish, Robert.
Where did he go?
No,
He
he
had
was
to leave.
here.
He
He had to leave, but he sent this in to us.
Okay.
Do you as hosts feel there is a magic number required to get a podcast started on time?
Wow. There would be. I just don't know what
Define,
it is.
define on time. Are we doing airline definition of on time? 15, yeah.
Or a doctor's definition of on time.
Doctor's definition of on time.
As everybody knows, we've never considered that an important parameter.
We give times that we will be getting together,
Yeah.
and then at some point thereafterwards we will start a show.
And if you love us, you'll stick with us
And,
and not complain.
and if you've never watched some of the pre-shows, sometimes it's pretty fun. So you should. Sometimes it's better than the show itself.
It's
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah. So for all you
So no.
punctualists, sorry,
Is that a word?
punctualists. Yeah, look it up.
Punctuality freaks.
Yeah, punctuality freaks. That's what I always say. Hey, shut up, Jeff. Oh, you have a question over here.
Okay. You go. Just hand that one over. The leak's a little longer.
Because then we have to go to Captain Elm's wonderful.
Hi everyone. I'm Jennifer from Orange, California. I'm a flight attendant and a student pilot.
Hi.
Hello.
I love your
I just
Airbus.
I live 20. I live there.
You're
I just had a question for the commercial pilots. Are there any helpful things that you're appreciative of when working with your in-flight crew? Because as you know, the flight deck door can be quite a barrier.
Yeah. Tea,
between the customers.
coffee.
Yeah, of course. I'll hit them for you.
Communication, I talk about this all the time, whether it be between you and your co-pilot or co-pilot captain, air traffic control, your gate agent, the flight attendants. I mean, communication is like the top, should be the top priority. Communication with your passengers. Don't sit there on a taxiway for an hour and not say anything to them, because they're going to come up with all kinds of crazy ideas of why you're sitting on the taxiway, because somehow that's benefiting the airline. And I've sat back there as a non-rever and listened to some of these things people are saying while we're sitting on the taxiway. And you know what? The reason why they're coming up with these crazy ideas is because nobody in that cockpit has said a darn thing, and it just drives me nuts. So
Up
communication.
to the folks in the cockpit to say that, or would you like the cabin crew to say something?
No, I think it's the cockpit that should say that, because they're the ones that know what's going on. There's 20 airplanes ahead of us. There's a ground stop. There's an emergency. There's a reason why we're not moving. It's not because we're trying to make more money.
I
That
think
might be a
it's
part of it.
always good to have emphasis that you're there for safety purposes, because I think people forget that. It shouldn't be your job to have to say that, but I've definitely been on flights where crew have emphasized that again, and I think it does make a difference.
So my advice to new captains who are addressing exactly this problem: in our airline, the pilots didn't have to pitch up till half an hour after the cabin crew. So you could, in theory, never meet them till you go on the aircraft. But I would always pitch up at the check-in time for the cabin crew and come into their briefing, introduce myself, introduce my first officer, give them a talk about the flight, ask them what they fancy doing that night when we were on our layover, and basically introduce myself, ask them if any of them had any companions, if they wanted help getting them on the aircraft jump seats, that kind of stuff. And then during the flight, as Jeff said, if you've got a problem, you're stuck on the ground and you can safely leave the flight deck, I would always get out of my seat and I would explain the problem on the personal address system to all the passengers. Then I'd get on my feet and I'd walk down the length of the aircraft, chatting to the passengers. If they've got any questions, I would do my best to answer them. The usual one was, "Am I going to miss my connection?"
No, you'll make your group.
Can't help you there, but I'll do that.
Guaranteed.
So I go right down the back and swing around and come back. And that was probably the one thing that got me the most amount of positive comments back from the cabin crew, because they say, "Oh, geez, that stopped all questions. That really settled everyone down. They saw you. You explained what was going on to them if they were worried." I think people are a bit nervous, perhaps, for flying, or concerned about the level of the fault we might have had, etc. So my advice to captains is be brave. If you're stuck and your passengers are in the gate room, then leave the aircraft and go and speak to them at the gate. Grab the PA system they got there and tell them why they're sitting there for an hour waiting for your aircraft to go. Or if you're in the baggage hall, there's no baggage arriving, as happened once in a really snowy day in JFK. I found a PA system on the wall and tried to explain to everyone that I was trying to contact the company and try and find out where their bags were. We had Sigourney Weaver standing there, and if she appreciated my PAs, then please send me a picture of yourself, Ms. Sigourney, with a signature. That would be very nice.
Brilliant!
I agree with Jeff 100%, and it goes right back to what I always say: set the tone. I set the tone with my passengers, I set the tone with my first officer, and set the tone with my flight attendants. And exactly what Nick said, I always try to, everybody knows, I always get up and in front of everybody. I'm not afraid to do that in the gatehouse. I'm not afraid to do that on the airplane. So you set the tone and let the flight attendants know that you're there to help them, and we're going to work together as a team. That's all you need to do.
And just understand with communication with the passengers, a lot of people are afraid to tell the truth, because they think that people are not going to want to hear that. And I found that even when you tell them exactly what's going on, even if it's not something they want to hear, they always appreciate it. They always
Can
thank
I have a quick aside on
Yeah.
that? So there was one time I was delayed in Philadelphia getting back to Charlotte, and it was because of weather, and there were ground stops, whatever. I forget the exact details. But it was back in the days when you could actually listen to ATC or communications through the, Channel 4, Channel 9, whatever it was on the IFE, basically. So I was listening to the communications going on, and, you know, it was like, okay, there's a ground stop, next update at such and such time past the hour, and then someone from the flight deck came on and made a PA that, oh, it's just gonna be another 10 minutes or so before we have it. I'm like, no, they just said the next update's in like an hour. Like, we're gonna sit here for an hour before you have any information. So I think truthful is better than not.
I leave it sometimes say, you know, there's beautiful weather here, beautiful weather where we're going. There's crappy weather in between. That's the reason why they're not letting us go. And here is a website. If you have your cell phone, your iPad, your whatever, if you have a internet connection, look up this web address, faa.gov.ois, whatever it is, and they can go and see all the airports and the ground stops and when the next update time. So it's not from me, it's from the FAA. And so, see, I'm not lying to you. This is what's happening here. But as far as your initial question about the pilots and the flight attendants, it's just important to establish that rapport. Don't blow them up. Now, the thing that Nick does with his flight attendant crews is great, but that's long haul. Dana and I are flying short haul. We'll sometimes show up to the airplane and we sit down and we got to do our checklist and go. We don't have enough time to bring the whole crew together and, you know, really have a nice conversation together. So it's important to knock out those essential items that are important with the at least the flight leader or A-line or whatever you call it at your airline, and let them know that they are a significant part of this whole operation, this mission. And, you know, if there's something that you're concerned about, let us know. You know, don't hesitate to call us up and let us know what's going on. Additionally, I don't know if you do this, Dana, or not. I listen to the interphone, the cabin interphone all the time. I monitor it. I monitor the PA system. Sometimes that's the first inkling of something that is going bad in the back of the airplane. So there, yeah, is there a medicals? Yeah, and I can hear that. And so before they even call me formally to let me know what's going on, I've already heard what's happening back there. So I'm already ready to go. And I tell them, I'm not listening to your cabin interphone to see if you have some juicy details and if you really think one of the pilots is cute, because I never hear that. So neither do I.
They filter all that out. It's like
Yeah.
selective hearing. It's fine.
Yeah, that guy's listening, so don't say anything.
You know, one of the things I will say, though, with our type of operation, a little different than Nick's international, and probably even on the longer flights within the continental U.S., we don't fly with the same crew much more than one leg. And to what Jeff said, a lot of times I don't ever meet the flight attendants in the back until we get to our destination, as they're getting off the airplane. Oh, hi, I'm so-and-so, as they're walking off the aircraft. So one of the things that's very hard to overcome is building that teamwork spirit among people you never even meet. All right, so the lead flight attendant is supposed to go ahead and convey what we're saying and how we're communicating, between the flight deck and them. But sometimes that's just lost because you never get to talk to somebody face to face. So I really wish that we actually stay with our flight attendants quite a bit more, so that way you can build up that repertoire with the crew and be able to have that seamless experience. So that's my experience.
And another important thing I have to say to the flight attendants is, and I try to convey this as well, if there is something happening back there, some kind of noise you've never heard before, a lot of flight attendants I find...
We don't want to know.
Yeah, we do. He's joking. Because a lot of times they'll go, well, I'm not going to say anything because it's probably nothing. But it's not. It might not be. We were taxiing out in Nassau, Bahamas, and on the 727, and we got this call from the flight attendant in the back. She said, there's a passenger back here that says there's something not right. There's something sticking up on the side of the airplane. And we're probably thinking, we were thinking there's probably something on the wing, the 727 wing. There are a lot of things sticking up and doing weird things. And so the captain, luckily, or fortunately, sent the engineer to go back and said, just go back, just kind of to show that we are concerned about
some reassurance,
Yeah.
Like it's fine.
So he goes back and he calls us from the back and he goes, dude, There's the cargo door is open back there because the cargo door has this thing that sticks up. You know, I think that's the way they designed it. So you're going, he's looking out the window and he sees this thing sticking up about 4 or 5 feet away from the airplane. They go, that doesn't look right. There shouldn't be anything sticking up back there. And so, you know, fortunately for us, we didn't take off with the cargo door open. We didn't have any lights up there. We're supposed to have a light that says the cargo door is open. There was no light.
So
There would have.
Pick your luggage.
It's in the
Make
sea.
sure you know where it is. Check off with the cargo door open. It's in the Atlantic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's the example that I use when I talk to flight attendants. So if somebody has a concern about something, even if you think somebody is like an idiot, it might actually be like, yeah, too much to drink or whatever. You know, let them know, let us know, you know, and then we can decide whether it's something we need to check out or not.
It never hurts to err.
That is true. Oh, that's a good thing. You should coin that. Yeah.
No one's ever said that.
Before we end this show, the special show.
Jeff, sorry to interrupt. Would you mind humoring me for just a couple of minutes on that question?
Yes. Oh.
Jennifer, I'm in a position where I work for an airline where we have a little over 200 of the flight attendants training to be pilots. So I appreciate it's not particularly relevant to some of the US operation. We're on, as this is a global podcast.
There's a lot of flight attendants in the U.S. training pilots.
So I fly the 320 Neo, and I actually encourage the flight attendants who are in pilot training to come and let me know during the briefing, because once they've done their FA briefing, they can come and join the pilot briefing. We'll go through the NOTAMs, the weather, we can involve them in the processes that we go through. And also, it's very valuable, in my opinion, that if you're in a position at the appropriate time to tell the operating crew that you are, a student pilot, because in the same way as it's quite useful for you as an FA to know when you've got deadheading crew on board the aircraft, if you have an emergency, the flip also works. So if we need, a knowledgeable pair of eyes or ears in the cabin, knowing that you're a student pilot is very, very helpful. And please do tell the guys. You might get some strange looks, but you might just benefit from some great experiences as well. If we don't know, we can't offer you the information. You probably don't.
By the way, if you want to hear Captain Al, Captain Al is doing a talk at 2:30.
In just over an hour.
Yeah.
From now.
But to put some sort of meat on the bone, we have when we have deadheading cabin crew who have their pilot license, we'll let them operate the radio because they have the license. They can do that, and it's a great opportunity to get used to the airline RT side of things, and the company fully support that.
Hey Jennifer, I'm not here. Please, you can't work.
Please tell us how everybody can see your talk at 2:30.
Yeah, if you want to listen to more of my BS, then come over to Forum Stage 10, where I'm doing a little seminar on fear of flying and conquering it in the general aviation environment. One of my many hats that I wear, so kind of jack of all trades, master of none, is I help people with the fear of flying. So if anybody's interested in that, please come down. It's at 2:30 at Forum Stage 10. And, I can bore you for 45 minutes or so there.
I'm definitely afraid of forums.
Okay, I'm going to let you announce. We're going to do something right after this, but we're kind of compressed with time. Pip?
Yeah, we're kind of running a bit short now. Please go and see Al for this talk, because no one else is.
Give him some support.
Yeah, we were going to, us Brits wanted to contribute a little bit to the festivities here. So we're going to invite everyone to join us in an ancient British tradition called the pub quiz. We've got some, slightly crap prizes to give away, but I don't think we've got time to do it now. But maybe if you keep an eye on the APG feed, we'll arrange it maybe for tonight or tomorrow night over at Mike's. Perhaps.
Yeah.
So it'd be great if you guys could come and join us all then and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we mentioned at the beginning of the show that we were going to give a prize for the two prizes for the best question. So I'll leave. No, okay. I'm not going to.
Liz is
Liz.
good.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we can model them, Liz, right?
We have microphones.
Sorry. I think the number one best question has to be, is it Darren? Darren, thank you. Darren, your question about CMO.
Yes.
All right. First prize is a choice. We have your choice of a coffee
We have a Virgin Atlantic flash drive
We have spare
or
notes.
tumbler that says just my cup of tea.
I like this accent. I'm gonna go with her.
All right.
All right.
There you go.
All right. There you go.
Okay, and the second prize has got to go to Nige for his question about
Oh, you're disqualified.
Give it back.
Okay, give it to someone. I like the. I think it's the flight attendants.
That was a great
Yeah,
question.
that was a great
There,
question.
Can I say one thing? Yes. You guys on Atlanta Tracon do an unbelievable job every day.
That's what y'all sound alike.
We all sound alike.
Yeah, check that out.
I love flying with you and listening to you guys, but I'm so glad I don't have to do it every
We have just been informed that this gentleman also has a podcast.
Wait, did you say your podcast?
What is it?
It's called the Traffic Pattern Podcast with Derek Bento. And, primarily, it's essentially what I do is each week I host different guests from the aviation community. Hope to have Jeff on now.
Yeah.
And we talk about different angles, whether it's air traffic control, flying in general. It was pretty cool this morning. I just had a chance to sit down with Tammy Doe Schultz from Southwest. That just a remarkable individual. So it's been a fun endeavor so far, and seeing you guys for the first time was pretty cool. So thanks to him for this. But like I said, you guys do some great stuff, and I really appreciate the frequency.
Well, we can't wait to hear your show. Landon wants to say something.
So I literally just met this guy 30 minutes prior to the show. I was sitting there trying to stuff my face because here at Oshkosh, there's so many squirrel moments, you kind of lose track of when you need to eat and when you need to have sustenance.
Right.
And he was like, hey, can I set my stuff down on this table? I'm like, yeah, sure, fine. It's fine, cool. Started talking. He's like, hey, I'm air traffic controller. I'm like, where at? In Atlanta. I was like, really? Atlanta? He's like, yeah, I have my own podcast called The Traffic Pattern. You need to come with me. Come on, let's go.
Welcome. As we said so many times, this is the best part of the show is just this wonderful community we have, such a depth of knowledge and such great people. Every one of you are just awesome. So thank you very much for coming out for our OshBlast 2019 special. And anything else before we sign off?
No, just to thank you fine folks for pitching up and enjoy the rest of us.
Steven's got something.
Just one quick question. What's the future of APG and anything for episode 400?
The future of APG and anything for episode 400.
The future of APG. We tried hard not to
This
plan
was
it.
the pinnacle here. And
Yeah, we're done. I just hope I live that long.
I'm sure we'll be doing something. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know if you can compare them that way.
TBA. To be announced.
It's been wonderful. We'll say that.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being part of
Big
our
round of
community.
applause
Yeah.
for all of our Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
This is our first guys and limited visibility and tailwinds. Take care. Challenge, Douglas.
How about wait.
Everybody, but before you all disappear off, we'd love to get a group photo of everyone in front of the RV. Fred here, International Man of History, will take it because he doesn't like being in photos. Because being an international man of history, he doesn't want his face to appear. If you all assemble up front of the RV, we'd love to have a picture.
Here, let's go. Let's sit down. Okay. We'll see you around somewhere. Sure, Hey, PJ. Good to see you, man. Knock us out. Oh, thanks for the power. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry we didn't have time for that. That was fun. Make sure we do it again. You can either do it here, we can set things up, or we can do it in my. Yeah, what's the I didn't want to intrigue on that. Yeah, good point. Yeah. When I looked down, I saw Al. I was like, oh, don't we have something going on there? Yeah. I understand.
Let's see the photo so Al can start moving. Take my card. Give me a shot, whatever.
Oh, yeah. I think I have a card too. Yeah, whatever. All right. Well, thank you, Derek. Thanks for your participation in the show. All right. Yeah, look forward to it.
You guys walk that way. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go this way.
Yeah. Al's got to get there.
You gotta catch it.
Yeah, still rolling.
Sure, it's a
Oh, good on everybody. Yeah, I appreciate it.